All right. Welcome back to the Meat of the Matter. Welcome into this Wednesday edition. We have a special guest today, which I will introduce in a second, because what we're going to be talking about today is something that it affects Peter every day. I reversed my type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes anyway, and diabetes is everywhere. It's affecting a lot of people around the world, and we have somebody today that knows a thing or two about it. So we're going to get into it right after this.
The guessing games, faking health, playing diet names, low fat life, vegan soul, but deep inside I didn't feel whole. Then came fire, then came fat, steak on the plate, I bounced right back. No more crashing, no more drag, just eggs and butter in my bag. Meat made me whole, yeah, you know it's true. Brought me back to what I always knew. Meat made me whole. Now I feel alive. Give me that. Say goodbye to the low-fat blood. Meat made me whole.
And we are live. And today, I guess Coach Stephen is here. Stephen Thomas. I'm a big fan. I know the boys are big fans of yours. You bring a very special, comforting wealth of wisdom to this space, to the community. And I've been following you for a long time. I love your conversations with Richard Thomas. And well, sorry. There we go. See, I'm a little nervous today. Good. We've been talking about diabetes quite a bit. Peter, obviously, is a type 1 diabetic. I have reversed my pre-diabetes, and it's an honor to have you here. Thanks for joining us, and welcome to the Meat of the Matter.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I feel quite honoured, and they were lovely words. I will be honest. I don't know Peter or Tony. I know Mark a little bit. So it's always a pleasure to meet new people in this space. It's actually a pleasure to meet new people out of this space because, you know, I like people. It's as simple as that.
Well, it definitely shines through on all your content, all your stuff, all your things. We love you, and we appreciate you being here to talk about this thing. I think that affects a lot more people than they might know. And, just with all the stuff that's going on in the world, driving people towards this standard diet, and just anybody that's trying to help get the word out. And you're a big part of that. So boys, how are we doing today?
Very well. Very well. Looking forward to this conversation. It's nice to have somebody on who knows what he's talking about. We know a little bit about this area, but as I mentioned to you on the emails, Stephen, we've never had an expert come on. I've heard your podcast talking about what's going on with carnivores, going back to carbohydrates at the moment. Very, very interesting. So I think we have a lot to talk about today.
That's
right. Mark, I'll tell you one thing I've noticed. You're beginning to sound like a sort of Irish version of Jordan Peterson there.
I know. I'm going to be on my best behavior today. I'm not going to do any swearing, Stephen. I know you don't like that, so I'm going to be on my best behavior.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I take issue with the word expert. I don't feel like I'm an expert. I feel like I'm 99% away from that. But
a lot of what you talk about, Stephen, just makes perfect sense.
Yes,
I mean, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Richard Smith, massive fan. But he's more into the science. You're just like when you talk, I'm like, oh yeah, I understand it now.
Yeah,
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I can do the science, and I mean, I have an honours degree in physiology and health sciences, but and a specialist practitioner status in obesity and diabetes. But every single day, I learn something new, and when you learn something new, you realise, wow, there's so much more out there that you don't know. But you're right. I mean. Yes, I try to make it easy to understand. I use analogies and basic props and stuff like that, because in the end, things are simple. It's made complicated. Medicine is deliberately complicated. They use Latin or Greek or Roman-derived words, but when you break it down, erythrocytes just means red cells. It just means, and that's it. Hemochromatosis, is just blood with a color problem, and I think that's the thing. we need to demystify it all for people so they're not scared when they go to the dentist or the doctor, or they go to the nurse practitioner, or their diabetes specialist talks to them, and people go, well, hang on a minute, this is really simple. Actually,
it's maybe a nice one to mention, since we talk about diabetes today, where the word insulin comes from. Right? It's
go on then. Where does the word insulin come from? I'm impressed. You've got that.
Well, it comes from the islands of Langerhans.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's a Dutch guy, actually, maybe Belgium, but it sounds like Dutch or Belgium. But yeah, just the place where the insulin is produced, basically.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And C-peptide just means connected peptide. It's connected to the insulin in the vesicle. You know, I mean, yeah, the derivative of words is one thing I particularly like, because earlier on in my life I had an honours degree in literature, and I was very interested in that as well. And I think being a deaf person who lip reads, I don't know if people know that on this channel, got my hearing aids in, I've got the subtitles on, and you know, so I look at the words and I have to break them down. And I found that as an adult. I mean, I'm 61, and if I'm doing some research and it's a word I've never seen before, I have to do it like I'm 8, because I can't hear it. I've got to look at it and then think, oh, actually, if you break down glucocorticoid, that sort of makes sense. I understand it, you know. So I think that's the thing. We've just got to make this simple as possible for everybody to understand.
Yeah, that's you know, like I find a lot of times when I'm you know, you're trying to explain blood work, and it's you know, you're right, like they overcomplicate it, and a lot of like what you said about the medicine words getting people freak out because they see, you know, some kind of term, and then they're elevated and they see this blood marker that's like, and then I don't know what that is, and the doctor just tells you, you know. And I think we've all been part of that, where, you know, the doctors have put you in a place where you have no idea what they're talking about. You just have no choice but to trust that drug that they're going to prescribe.
So can I just jump in here now? Why are carnivores panicking about these numbers going up at the moment, though? Because I just don't get it. Like, because we're seeing this at the moment. They're going on about, okay, my H1C is going up, but like, I've said this in the past, like if I met these people and I was able to interview these people, the first question I would ask is, how do you feel?
Yep.
Like, like that's it. Like it's going to be completely different if you're on a carnivore diet compared to the standard diet. You're not going to feel great. So obviously your blood work numbers are going to be completely different.
Yeah. Well, that's it.
Sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the one that everyone doesn't understand. And I keep banging on about this. Even the labs know it's unreliable, because they're looking at what's called adjusted HbA1c. I mean, I explain it. I've got a prop here. If you want me to spend 3 minutes explaining how they get the number,
yes, please. And
then you'll realise why the HbA1c is a pretty bad measurement. So let me just prepare my prop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right. Okay. So when right, let's do this. So when a red blood cell is, in the old days, they'd put it on a microscope and they'd count it. You know, they'd look how many red blood cells are there. So a complete blood count is exactly that. They used to count it. Now they don't. It goes in front of a sensor and it gets beeped. And if it's a red blood cell, beep, red blood cell. If it's a platelet, let me get a little platelet for you, just to make things easy. Boop, they know it's a platelet, different shape, different size. Well, when you do the HbA1c, you've got a red blood cell and it's been glycated, and this has got things showing you it's been glycated, hemoglobin. All right. Now, there is a constant in the calculation, but the life of the red blood cell is not constant, it's variable. So immediately you've got something unreliable. But let me just briefly explain what this is illustrating and how the numbers can change. So let's imagine the hemoglobin, which is a content of the red blood cell. Let's imagine one of those was glycated every day over a period of 120 days. And each one of these represents 10 days worth of glycation. So we've got 12 of those. So it's 120 hemoglobins have been glycated over 120 days. And there's a thing called a high pressure liquid chromatography thing. And it goes into this column. And depending on the charge, you get a score. So let's just imagine that this has been in the circulation 120 days, which is what they believe it lives till, and it goes off, and then the next one comes in. You get this score of 120, and then you divide that by 120 days and you get the score of 1. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because, yeah, we said 1 hemoglobin per day was being glycated. Now, when I trained in phlebotomy and also in anticoagulation and hematology and all that sort of stuff, there were many people that had a really low HbA1c. And I was told, you can't tell that person they're not diabetic because there are other markers and it could be unreliable. Now, these people are what's called hemolytic anemic. But trust me, just bear with me. So what happens is their red blood cell lasts for 60 days on average. So when that goes into the high pressure chamber, bang, the charge is different. Boop, off that goes. The next one goes in. Boop, off that goes. You get a score of 60. You divide 60 by 120 because that's the constant in the calculation. That person's HbA1c is 0.5. But it isn't 0.5. It's still 1 per day. All that's happened is you've got this fake number because it's lived for a shorter period of time, but it's still the same glycation rate. You're right with that, Peter? You got that as well? Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So then what happens? So what happened about 6 years ago when I started at MeatRx, Sean Baker's place? And I used to do the diabetes meeting for all of his members. We had so many people with continual glucose monitors saying, I don't get it. My average on that is much better than the average on my HbA1c. The HbA1c is higher. Well, yeah, because and we can prove it with what's called a reticulocyte count, which is the immature red blood cells. It shows how much the body is ramping up production. If you're hemolytic anemic, your reticulocyte count is huge because your body has got it basically double its production because they're dying so quick. On a carnivore diet, reticulocyte count is really low because they live longer. And also we've got the other evidence that the HbA1c doesn't match the continual glucose monitor. Anyway, so if it's been in the thing for 150 days, boop, there you go. That's 15 of those, even though it's still 1 per day. What happens is you get a score of 150. You divide that by 120 days. Your HbA1c is 1.25. Same glycation rate. It's just that the fact that red blood cell has been floating around for longer. So if people change their diet based on the A1C, they're not doing the right thing. It's really that simple. It's absolutely factual. You get a reticulocyte count, proves that your red blood cells are living longer, and then you can get your collaborating evidence. You can look at your fasted insulin, your C-peptide. You could look at your fasted glucose, and you will see that you haven't got a problem with your HbA1c. That's the first thing. The labs are already looking at HbA1c, so it goes through that chromatography, but also is matched up with a reticulocyte count. You get a better number. When that's out, all this noise will stop. It will be that simple. There are so many people who don't understand it and still talk about it. And then you get into insulin. So thanks, Peter, for that. I like that little bit of trivia, but I don't want to be talking all night. I like the other people to be able to talk. But we have 14 different transporters to get glucose into the cell. 14 different types. Only one is dependent on insulin. Only one. 13 do not need insulin. And even GLUT4, which everyone talks about, has 4 other methods that don't rely on insulin. So it's not all about insulin. It's about glucose concentration. And this is what a lot of the people are not understanding is if you have low insulin, your body is going to start using passive diffusion to put the glucose into the cell rather than insulin, which speeds it up. But we don't need to speed it up because we've not got high levels of blood glucose or dangerous levels. This arbitrary, it's got to be under 100 milligrams per deciliter. That is literally what I just said, arbitrary. Who said that 100 was really good? Nobody. Every single actual research metric, and don't forget I did a decade in the private blood testing environment. We know the thresholds where there's a problem. First, the big one where diabetes mellitus comes from, which is a mixture of Greek and Latin, which literally means passing through honey-flavored piss. There you go. Yeah, so I've sworn, right? But that's what it means, right? That only happens at 180 milligrams per deciliter. That's called the renal threshold. So that's when your kidneys go, well, way too much sugar. way too much sugar. We can't get rid of it in any other way other than urinating it out. So if we go back to symptoms, because that's the big thing, why do people get thirsty and why do they urinate a lot? Because if they are diabetic, firstly, they're trying to dilute the concentration. Secondly, they're trying to excrete the concentration. So a diabetic knows they're diabetic because the body is so smart. Right, there's too much sugar. There's too much sugar. Drink loads of water, then excrete it. So that's the first thing. Secondly, the other threshold, and this is, we know, again, because we know how cataracts form and stuff like that, over 7 millimoles per litre, which is about 127 milligrams per deciliter. The polyol pathway, the physiology of the body, sorry to go a little bit sciencey, but when we have a certain level of blood glucose, there's a thing called the polyol pathway, which about 3% of glucose is dealt with. And what happens is it goes off and it's turned into sorbitol, which is an osmotic compound, but at the low level of only 3% of the glucose, it's just helpful to get a little bit of glucose out of the system. Once you go over 127 milligrams per deciliter, that 3% becomes 30%, because the body knows, hey, this is a really big chunk of glucose and we've just got to get it out the bloodstream. And that will increase the sorbitol, and that is, like I say, osmotic compound, which sucks up water, goes to your eye, and that's why your lenses become, they have cataracts, because it's soaking up that water. So when we're looking at blood glucose and average blood glucose, you can have two people with an average of 100, but they can be completely different. And I hope I'm answering your question, Mark. So let's say the first one comes in, it's 100 milligrams per deciliter, and we look at the daily excursion, and it's 150, then it's 50, 150, 50, 150, then 50. Right, the average is 100, but we've got these peaks where you're going into that over the 127 and you're approaching the renal threshold. The amount of insulin to bring it down is huge. Now, a carnivore walks in, is allegedly these 105 milligrams per deciliter. Oh, that's really scary. It's too high. Well, not if it's 105, 95, 105,
Exactly,
95.
yeah.
Same average, different.
Still 100.
Yeah.
It's completely different. You're nowhere near any of these thresholds. Nowhere near.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead, Tony.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I had a question just yesterday, funny enough, about how do you know, and it was a carnivore that's done some great things with his blood work, but he asked me, he's like, how do you know that you've reversed your pre-diabetes? And I was like, well, according to them, I have the markers I have, but how I feel is the key. And it's like I track my glucose for 3 years. I CGMs, all of it. And when that just hit light bulbs with the glucose roller coasters, my lines were flat, even though my averages were coming down like incrementally. And then my hemoglobin A1C actually went up, which was, you just explained why. But it's interesting to feel it, because I feel amazing. And I feel a hell of a lot better than I did 6 years ago when the doctors told me there was nothing I could do about my diabetes that was going to happen in 5 years. So thank you for that, because that's really, really huge.
Yeah, and that's what you're told. And you just did a buzzword, which also is Science magazine in 2019 said that the pre-diabetes phrase was born as a public relations catchphrase. And that's true. In 2001, the National Institute of Health, in the cafeteria, a group of experts, which is why I pulled you up about the word experts, got together, and to scare doctors out of their complacency, right? What they invented the term pre-diabetes.
Wow.
I mean, it was just plucked out.
I heard that before. And I heard that before, and I was like, okay, well, you're either diabetic or you're not.
Well,
yes.
Well, so you could. This is what I kind of try and explain to people, and I mean, obviously, listening to people like yourself, Ben Bickman, the disease is happening decades before you're diagnosed with diabetes. Yes. Like you can see that it's happening.
Yes, and that's not pre-diabetes. That's the whole point. It's about your levels of insulin in the background, because people can have, sorry to use inverted commas again, perfect bloods. They can say, look at my blood glucose. It's 89 milligrams per deciliter. It's fantastic. And you go, well, how much insulin did you need to get it to that? You know, what's happening, what's going on. And of course, this average of, you know, let's say 80, for instance, well, obviously, if your body's really smart, if it knows there's going to be 45%, 65% of your diet coming in as incoming carbohydrates, it's going to downgrade that level because it doesn't want to push you toxic. You know, so it's giving itself a little buffer zone. So it's running it, but a lot of insulin is doing that. But with carnivore, you know, the body is smart. It knows what's coming in. It's not going to be a bunch of carbohydrates every, 4 or 5 hours. So we can run at 105 and it's absolutely fine because when we eat fats and proteins, we maybe bump it up to 110.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to get really sort of into the weeds of this, so 100 milligrams per deciliter, you know, above that, that's really frightening. Well, 50 grams of carbohydrate is the equivalent of 1,000 milligrams per deciliter.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's really huge.
I only found out this recently. Sorry for interrupting you, Stephen. I only found out this recently because I worked with a type 1 diabetic for about 8 months. And when we worked together, he was having his carbohydrates, but he was getting these hyperglycemic attacks. And I was like, okay, I don't think he needs all this insulin. He was taking, I think he was taking around 4 up to 10, 12 times a day. And I was like, okay, eventually, now I didn't say this to him. I just said, eventually, I think he can actually bring his insulin levels. He can actually bring his insulin down if he just brings the carbohydrates down. 6 months into it now, he's only taking 2 units of insulin a day. He takes it first thing in the morning, and then he takes another one at nighttime, and that's it. And he's on a no carbohydrate diet. This is a type 1 diabetic.
Yep. Well,
And he's completely he's completely managed the whole thing. Everything is blood work is absolutely perfect. And the one thing I'm getting from it, he's lost the weight. The inflammation is gone. You know, I mean, he doesn't have any pains anymore. This guy was like obese. He was like he was over 20 stone. I don't know what that is in pounds. I think it's around 280 or 300 or something like that. So he's a big guy. So this is what frustrates me when I hear type 1 people saying about type 1, so you can't gain weight. I'm like, if you're eating a lot of carbohydrate, it's gonna catch up on you eventually. I don't care if you're type 1 or not.
Yeah, and Peter, I mean, Peter, you could speak to that, couldn't you? Yeah.
It's, anyway, the very fact that he experienced hypoglycemia tells that he's taking too much insulin because so many people, they think that they need carbs to prevent hypoglycemia, which is silly because, a century ago or so, without the insulin, there was no way that it would go down. So it's and now that I'm on the carnivore diet for 3 years now almost, maybe once a month or so, I take a glucose tablet. So even the hypoglycemic episodes, I write them out most of the times because it will go to 3 millimoles or so. And what I also noticed in relation to the average blood glucose being a little bit higher, I got the feeling that since I'm on a high-fat diet, that my gluconeogenesis is much more ready to start and it's more powerful. So if I go on a walk, my blood sugars will go up typically. And my basal is perfectly set, but it will gradually go up because I don't know what your ideas are about it, Stephen, but my guess is that my body actually realizes that it needs glucose, so it will produce a little bit. So and then I go to 100, 110, and of course I'll go higher if I don't take insulin, but that's a different story, of course.
And it's probably
it's interesting. Sorry, Tony, go on. Go for it.
Your body's probably getting more efficient at doing the natural things.
Yeah, I think so, because it's right? That's probably a reason why I experience less hypos as well.
And I think the thing is, what you hit on there about eating to cover insulin is exactly what happened when they discovered insulin in 1922. They couldn't modify it like they can now, and what they found was when, again, it's doctors being really quite not trusting in their patients. There was a decision made that no, if we tell people to do 3 or 4 injections a day, they won't do it. So let's do 1 injection, which obviously would be a bigger amount of insulin, and tell them to eat 6 times a day. So what you were doing was eating to cover your medication, not the other way around.
Wow.
You know, so that stuck with us for over 100 years. That's 103 years now since that happened, and we're still saying. And Peter, I'm not being critical of you. You know, you just said it. It's so embedded in us. You know, your glucose goes down. And you have to eat because you've taken your basal insulin. And it's like, well, that's completely the wrong way around. But I mean, when you're talking about type 1, obviously you do have to have that basal insulin into you. But what you said there about exercise, your body is still physiologically able to recognize effort and the demand for energy. Your problem is obviously supply of insulin, but you know, there's no problem with your gluconeogenic pathway. It's all to do with bringing it down. So when you did your walk, the body just ramped up the production because it realizes it needed it. So that would be a combination of glucagon and norepinephrine and epinephrine, all looking at the fact that your homeostasis is changing and reacting to it. So you start walking and your energy reserves obviously start to go down a little bit, completely censored across the body. And it all kicks into it. You know, basically the hypothalamus will see that and it will release CRH and ACTH, and it will get you to produce a little bit of epinephrine or adrenaline, let's talk in English, noradrenaline, and also a little bit of cortisol. That will put your blood glucose up. But the main driver of the blood glucose is actually coming from glucagon, which is the yin and yang of the insulin. So, yeah, that's totally normal. But obviously, you're right. You can't produce enough insulin to cover it. So, as a type 1, you might need to inject. But as you get more adapted to this and into the journey, I think like you just said, I think you need less and less because everything works better. So those other 13 GLUT transporters are much more sensitive now. So any glucose that's going out, that is getting into your cells. It's mainly the GLUT4 that does depend on insulin that is the problem, which is obviously the one on the muscle. So, yeah, I mean, that all makes total sense to me, but definitely.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see that these differences, which for a type 1 diabetic can already be huge, right? If you have a walk and it goes up by 30 milligrams per deciliter, or let's say 1 or 2 millimoles, all those details, they are sort of invisible if you eat carbs or if your basal is super high and with all the meal boluses in the background. So that, yeah.
Yeah, well, let's join that up. So when you went for a walk, you can see that going up. And you know that has to be managed. So isn't it terrible advice to say to someone to have 100 grams of carbs?
You'll just keep going up then, yeah.
You are just literally saying, let's make this really hard work for everybody.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all.
No, doesn't make any sense at all. Like I can never understand why we have to keep on giving these people more insulin just to feed the problem.
Well, it comes down to
because they're saying to eat carbohydrates, which is the problem.
And it comes down to the Bernstein theory of small mistakes, small numbers. Like it just all fits into that, right? Like that seems to be the key. To switch gears a little bit, Stephen, I know Mark he'd be upset.
Well, maybe if we're going to switch gears, I have one more question related to this.
Yeah, for sure.
What I see a lot in videos right now in the diabetes community is that they talk about insulin resistance. So when you go on a high-fat diet and when you eat protein, you become insulin resistant. And I suspect that all people that are saying that are basically still looking at carbs anyway. But yeah, I wonder what your opinion is about that, because I think, for example, the fact that we eat protein and so on, we have to account for that as well. So we take insulin for that. And if I look at my total daily insulin needs, it didn't go up. So
well, you're not insulin resistant. I mean, firstly, I don't actually agree with that terminology. I think that's not really the correct terminology, because what is actually happening is the cell is protecting itself from an overplus of energy. So you've got a cell. I mean, this is a multi-purpose tool here. So that's your cell, okay? And let's say that they're all fatty acids. Well, that looks pretty full up because we're fat adapted. You know, so there's not much room for any glucose in there. So what happens? That cell will lock out not only glucose, it will lock out fats because it's got its 100% supply that it needs. Well, that's what they call insulin resistance. Now, the sort of high carb advocates say, well, all this fat is blocking your glucose entry. Well, don't eat all that glucose. Just keep eating the fats and the proteins. But the other thing that happens, we need a low level of glucose in our body, which is, like I say, about 100 milligrams per deciliter, which is about a teaspoon in 5 liters of blood, because the red blood cells exclusively need glucose. That's the only cell that absolutely needs glucose. That's why we have this wonderful supply. But it's not the cells, it's only the red blood cells. All the other trillions of cells don't need it. So the blood glucose is going to reside in the bloodstream. It's so obvious, because it's not going to pack out the cell and give it an overplus of energy, which the cell doesn't want. So the things like the GLUT4 transporter doesn't translocate from the cytosol to the membrane. It just says, no, we've got enough, thank you very much. We've got our fatty acids. We've got the energy we need. And that makes total sense. I think Jason Fung used to do quite a good analogy of, I think the Japanese metro, the underground trains, where the doors opened and it's packed with people already. And they would employ people to push, guards to push people into the train, which is obviously very dangerous. Well, that's analogous to like the drug metformin. It's forcing people in. But when the doors open, you've only got to look and say, well, hang on a minute. Imagine they're all fatty acids and the people on the platform are a mixture of fatty acids and glucose. You think, well, hang on a minute, that compartment is full. That's not train resistance or passenger resistance. It's management of compartments, isn't it?
Got to wait for another car.
Or not have those passengers allowed in to the platform.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, sorry for interrupting, but I'm curious. I'm going to make a weird proposal now, but say that I want to measure insulin resistance still. So we shouldn't look only at carbs. What do you think that if we look at how much insulin you take, I'm going to say another scary thing, per calorie. So you look at how much you eat, because if then I look at my insulin intake for a meal, then it's sort of similar like in the past. I could say more or less. It's still a little bit less, and then I can sort of also use daily totals as a proxy. What do you think of that measurement?
Well, I mean, it works because you haven't got that overplus of energy, because you haven't got you haven't even got the physiologically correct level of insulin for the cells to get enough energy in. That's the classic thing about why calories don't actually matter. When you look at a type 1 diabetic, we can sadly, Peter, use a type 1 diabetic to prove this, because if you didn't have insulin, you could eat 10,000 calories and you'd still waste away. Right? So calories aren't the thing, are they? It's your cell's ability to take up the energy that you're putting into your body. So getting away from that analogy again and getting back to the physiology, your cells need the energy to go in. You don't produce enough insulin, so you have got to artificially add to that. That makes total sense. But you will get to the point, if you wanted to sort of prove that you've got to your cell's maximum capacity for carbohydrates, it'd be very difficult to do that. You'd need day-to-day blood readings. You'd need to do your C-peptide over so many time periods. You'd have to look at your fasted insulin and your fasted glucose. That's why there's no such thing as an insulin resistance meter, because there's no way of actually doing that.
Well, maybe the best way is what type 1 diabetics can do. Don't eat and then inject a bit of insulin and see how much your blood glucose drops. And I mean, probably there's still a lot of margin, because it depends on all kinds of circumstances. But if I look at that as well, it's sort of similar, as long as I don't eat things like cheese and so, because they will typically increase my, let's call it again, insulin resistance. But
but doing your thought experiment there, what you would actually learn is when you have got all the available energy into the cell. So it wouldn't really measure insulin resistance. It would measure your cell's capacity. And at what point do you then break even and your cells say, See, it's not insulin resistance. Your cells say, right, thank you. We've had enough insulin to put the energy into the cell, and we've now got enough.
Yeah, and with half a pound of cheese, I reach that quite easily.
Yeah.
Or going on a long cycling trip, drinking raw dairy, right, Peter?
Yeah, then it works. Yeah.
But you get a lot of people volunteering for that one.
Okay, well, you know that, Peter, that ties into the question I have for Stephen, because we wanted to get into a little bit of the conversation about, seems like, you know, is it clickbait, or is there something happening with carnivores bringing back in carbs? You know, all over, it seems like all over social media now, there's all these carnivores that are now saying carbs are okay. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, like I say, I think a lot of them are changing for misinformation, because the two most common things, or maybe the three most common things, one is the A1C, and I think they don't realize it is an unreliable marker. They literally do not understand it. That's the first thing. Second thing is they say my thyroid numbers are tanked, and that's not true, because T3, you need a lot less T3 when you're eating this way, when you're eating carnivore, because T3 is absolutely essential in the metabolism of carbohydrates. It moves pyruvate across the mitochondrial membrane in the glycolysis cycle, which is basically carbohydrate metabolism, and you need a lot less T3 because we're not doing that. We're doing all beta oxidation. We're using fats as our fuel. So I've had that with just countless people where they are worried about their T3, but when we look at their T4 and when we look at their TSH, and then we look even further deeper into their numbers, it's not tanking. It's actually a physiological adaptation. It's actually beautiful, to be honest. And these people that are doing these things are saying, well, it's not joined up. Gluconeogenesis is really stressful, and we need to bring your T3 levels up. Well, what does T3 do? Well, when you have higher levels of T3, it ramps up gluconeogenesis. So these guys are not even getting their facts right.
Oh man.
You know,
that was the thing with that we saw a video on our last show about, I'm not going to mention his name so we don't want to slander him, but at the same time, he was saying that, like, putting fear, gluconeogenesis is stressful. It's bad. You need to calm it down. And it's like, whoa, where did this come from? Like,
it's a physiological process that we do every single second of our life. Everybody does it, whether they're eating hundreds of carbs or no carbs. It's just a low level supply of glucose that we need for our red blood cells, and it's not stressful in any way. Actually, adding just 50 grams of carbs is stressful. I mean, that is a toxic level that the body has to address. They also talk about, cortisol as well. Oh, it's a stress hormone. No, it's a homeostatic hormone. It goes and it's self-regulating. It's got a negative feedback loop on it. And in fact, when they're talking about gluconeogenesis and your blood glucose going up, well, actually, the main driver of that is glucagon. That's not a stress hormone. That's just the yin and yang of insulin. And then you've got what if you look at what happens, they're worried about high blood glucose on their sort of average or their daily basis or whatever. They want it lower. Well, when it's low, what does that do? Well, it ramps up cortisol. Because cortisol's job is to maintain blood glucose levels. So it doesn't make any sense. And then when you get high blood glucose, cortisol lowers. So they've got it completely 180. They don't understand the joined up physiology, so they just look at these numbers. Oh, 100, that's too high. I'm not comfortable with that. Why? It's an arbitrary number. Actually, it's nowhere near any problematic number. Like I say, I think over 127 milligrams per deciliter. I would still say even that is not as bad as maybe getting up to 180. And then they're looking at the T3 wrong. They're looking at cortisol wrong. They don't understand it. They don't understand gluconeogenesis. They don't understand that cortisol regulates itself. What the biggest frustration I see, Stephen, is that the people that you looked up to, carnivores on social media, are actually agreeing with these people. Like, I see this in the comments all the time, and I'm like, oh, well, hang on a second. You've been advocating a carnivore diet for such a long time, but because this person's come out now and he's talking about certain topics, you're actually agreeing with him.
I just don't understand that. And I'm like, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, well, you've been saying this for such a long time. Why are you going against this now?
Well,
And I'm sure you guys have seen it as well. There's a few of them out there that you probably follow yourself, and you're looking at the comments and you're like, no, this doesn't add up here.
Well, my coronary artery calcium scan when I was high carb, just before I went low carb, was 639. Now I'm 61, and we have to understand, I don't understand, for instance, Robert Kilt's being worried about his CAC, because it went up a little bit, but it didn't go up as much as if he wasn't on carnivore. So the progression at our age, or my age now, my CAC would maybe go up like 25% per annum. So my reading would be about 3,000. Now, I don't think it would be that. And we can't do the sliding doors experiment. We can't say, right, what would I love Rob, so I'm not saying anything bad. His score worried him, and I get that. I'm totally happy. It's his body, and he's an intelligent, lovely guy. But I would want to say to him, well, what could it have been if you didn't eat carnivore?
Yeah.
Because the evidence there is it probably could have been a lot higher. And also, is your progression lower than the average person? Because I think it would be, because I don't think it was a frightening number. I can't remember. I don't know the data, so I could be speaking out of turn, but I seem to remember what the number was and what it is now. And I don't think it's a huge leap considering the time difference between when you had the first one and the second one. So it's people looking at these numbers in isolation rather than thinking, let's take a step back and think, well, actually, and the reason I know this is because people book me because I had a high CAC score, and they feel, well, this guy's had it. It's a bit like Peter being a type 1. If someone wants to know about type 1, it's better to talk to someone that's had type 1. They've lived it. They know it inside out, right? They're the expert type 1 because they've got it, So they speak to me and, how do you reverse it? How do you reverse it? I say, whoa, hang on. Before we talk about reverse, first thing to do is accept there might be progression. Let's slow the progression. If we slow the progression year by year, you're doing the right things, then maybe we could stop it. And then maybe we could reverse it. The body is not going to instantly do something. What is calcification of the coronary arteries? Well, it's nature's stent. There's been damage there, and it's cleverly put calcium in there. That's possibly more worrying to have the soft plaques. But if we're going to talk about the CAC score, which is one of the experts you're talking about, let's look at the progression and let's frame it right. Is it that bad? And I don't think it is. And you're right. Everybody that's sort of falling into some of the way everyone's talking about it, they're people I respect, and I don't understand it. I genuinely, I've reached out to people and said, or I've had people that know me have said, why don't you speak to Stephen, because I don't think you understand the A1C. I don't think you understand T3. I don't think you understand the numbers. I don't think you understand that the daily average doesn't have to be under 100. So all the reasons, they're just not valid. Now, that's not denying people's experience. If they've gone onto carbs and they've lost some weight and they feel better, well, that's temporary. They're making their dopamine reception much happier. They are. I also think it might lead to there's hydration issues when they were on carnivore, because now they're eating more glucose. The carbohydrates are sucking up the water, therefore they'll have a better maybe fluid balance. Their electrolytes might be better. They might be happier because they're eating the things that they're addicted to or they really wanted to eat. And it's transient. I think it's just, that old phrase, you can't outrun a bad diet. All of those things will catch up on them because the glycation, and sorry, Mark, I know you want to jump in. If you don't mind me, just
no problem, Stephen. No problem.
If you're putting more, if you're worried about glycation, going back to the HbA1c, forget that. That's a rubbish reading. You adding carbs will increase glycation. That's a fact because there's more glucose in there. What is glycation? Glycation is looking at proteins, not just hemoglobin. Every protein in your body that's got a nitrogen terminus, which is what they are, will get that bond. Glucose will bond to it. It's called a shift base. It's irreversible. Once it's done, you've got a dysregulated protein that is damaged. That will be one of the things you should do is look at maybe a fructosamine test, which is nothing to do with fructose, or a glycated albumin test. And you will see, even with your lower blood glucose readings, with that extra, which is being driven by high insulin, you will find that your fructosamine or your glycated albumin will go up. You will be glycating your proteins more. That's a fact. Absolutely nailed on. And they're not looking at that nuance. You add those carbohydrates in, your insulin's going to go up. There's going to be some glycation damage. That will come out in those two tests. And 6 months, a year down the line, you might think, hang on a minute, that 50 grams is now 150, because for many, it's going to be the old carb addiction triggering. And your insulin levels will go up. And there's people out there saying, oh, we're insulin suppressed. No, we've got appropriate adapted insulin. We don't need so much. So they might be happy for a little while. Oh, wow, it was 2 and now it's 10. That's a terrible trend to start putting your insulin up, especially as you're getting older. You don't want that. That's not what you want. You want to be more insulin sensitive. You want to produce less insulin, and you want the insulin you produce to be bang on and doing its job. So sorry about that, Mark. But I did want to say that because I think that's really important, that they're not looking at the nuance. They're just buying into gluconeogenesis is stressful, which it isn't. T3 is tanked. Well, if you raise it, you're going to make more gluconeogenesis happen. Cortisol is a stress hormone, which it isn't. It's homeostatic. And if you do get your blood glucose down, you're going to raise cortisol. It's crazy. It's crazy.
No, I was just going to add, Stephen, that it may not be a problem now, but it will be a problem eventually.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And when we're seeing what's going on at the moment, everybody's just focusing on, okay, we have Lisa at the moment. She just wanted to get in shape, and she felt like, okay, I was on a high-fat diet, and she's telling everybody that she's been doing carnivore for 16 years. But how do we know she did carnivore for 16 years? We don't know what happened in that period. We don't know if she was experimenting or she was adding in certain foods. Because I can tell you right now, I've been doing carnivore for 5 years. I can't even look at a carbohydrate anymore. I have that addiction is gone from me. Now, at the very, very beginning, it took me nearly 6 months to get over my addiction because I knew I had a problem in the first place. And this is what I just don't understand. Why are you getting to a stage of adding the carbohydrates back in? I just don't. That's where my head is scrambled. Why do you feel you need to add these carbohydrates back into your diet? Surely the addiction was there in the first place, and you weren't strict carnivore.
Because these people sound convincing. It mystifies me because I know the physiology. But if you don't know the physiology, when someone comes on and says, you need your blood glucose under 100 milligrams per deciliter, your HbA1c should be going down, not up. Those basic facts do it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, well, just an anecdote to add related to this is that I tried once to reintroduce bananas. That was a part of an experiment to look at cholesterol. Let's not talk about cholesterol, but what happens if I introduce anything above, say, 20, 30 grams of carbohydrates per meal and say above 100 grams per day? And if I do that consistently, after the second or third day, it becomes truly a mess. I mean, first of all, once you start doing it, it's already more difficult to control because you make larger errors. But after day 2 or 3, it became such a mess that, I'm going to use the word insulin resistance again, but that went sky high. And I would have to inject like sometimes 3-4 times as much insulin for a simple banana as compared to what I would do in the past. So I think that this is a part that most people that are not type 1s, they won't see it because their pancreas will just go in overdrive, and they might even feel sort of okay during those days and maybe feel great even somehow.
But you're the perfect example, you see, because what's happened is you have had 3 bananas over 3 days and your cells have taken that up and soaked it all up, and you've had to use more and more insulin to do that. So I understand why you're saying that's insulin resistant, but you are, artificially adding insulin into your system, aren't you? And it is getting soaked up and the cells are going, right, okay, we're nearly full. It's going to take a lot of effort to push in more.
Maybe I don't know what your idea about that is as well, but when I suddenly start to introduce those bananas, my suspicion is also that my glycogen reserves in the liver, for example, will be even more. Well, they will be much fuller, so my liver will be trigger happy to just send out the glucose, especially during those days, because it's not used to it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the liver and the muscles have finite storage. I mean, this is the insulin model of obesity in a nutshell. Because once you start eating carbohydrates, there's only a few places to put it. So once your liver is full up with glycogen and your muscles are full of glycogen, your body's smart. It doesn't go, oh, I've got all this excess energy, I'm just going to dump it out the window. No, we'll put it in the fat stores. And this is, as you said, even as a type 1 diabetic, you can put weight on because your body is saying, well, we struggle with the carbohydrate. We're intolerant to it because we haven't got enough insulin, but we're still gonna keep it somehow. So put it in the fat stores, And it's pretty frightening how people look at these things. They talk about hormones as if they're scary. They talk about processes as if they're scary. Insulin is apparently the big evil thing, but it isn't. If you didn't have it, Peter, you're the testament to this. You really struggle without it. It's essential. And, the carnivores that were saying, oh, my insulin's too low, it's suppressed, or whatever the phrase, that's in suppression for that week is. Yeah. Well, if your muscles are working, I tell you what, you've definitely got insulin.
Yeah. Can I just ask a quick question, Steve? Because this is what I'm seeing now lately with people that are doing carnivore after 6 months, let's say about 4 to 6 months, they stall and things are not moving anymore. And that's when I'll say, okay, I need to see some blood work. Now, when I get blood work, the first thing I notice is the triglycerides are gone very, very high. So they're usually over about 140, maybe 150. And I'm thinking into my head, like, why is this happening? They're only on eating proteins and fats. But from what I've been learning off social media is that the diet can consist of way too much fats, way too much fats. And if you actually eliminate the fat out of it and just go high protein, bring the fats down to like minimal, not too low, maybe around 20 or 30 grams, then this basically gets things back to normal again, and you can see the weight loss moving again. So what I'm saying is that I've seen people being on carnivore for a very, very long time, and they're losing the weight, but they do reach a point when nothing's moving anymore. Like, no matter what you do. And I don't want to be in a situation where I'm restricting, I'm doing too much work in the gym. I'm like, I don't want to go down that route. I feel like there's something going wrong here. So that's when I do ask for blood work. And then when I do ask for it, the first thing I notice is your triglycerides are very, very high.
Yeah, well, that indicates there is too much fat in the diet, I think. You have to be really careful with testing, because if you haven't fasted properly for 10 to 12 hours, those triglycerides will be high. So yes, I mean, they're the things I would look at. I would look at the fat to protein ratio, and literally, you're right. I mean, there's this big thing about a stick of butter a day. I was at the Steak and Butter Gang for a long time, and they're brilliant there. But for some people, you need to stop that. The ratio of 1 to 2 for protein to fat isn't apt for many people, and you need to cut that back. We can still oversupply the body with nutrients, even with this way of eating, because so many people have dysregulated hormone signaling. The leptin or the ghrelin isn't working because for 30, 40 years they've calorie restricted, which also means you've nutrient restricted, you've fat restricted, fat soluble vitamin restricted. So, of course, when you come into this way, you're probably soaking up all the things that you didn't have. All the, like I say, fat soluble vitamins would be the biggest example. And then you do have to keep tweaking until you get to a point where it's exactly where you want to be. And I think that is, and it could be other things they're putting into their system, which maybe they don't need. Over dependence on artificial sweeteners. Too much dairy is a good one. Again, when we're talking about blood glucose,
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. I think the most important thing is that even if you're like 4 or 6 months into this, if it's not working, I can promise you, don't add in more carbohydrates because that's not the solution.
That's definitely not the solution. It is,
you know what I mean? It's
reduce
so
that
that's-
ratio.
So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if it's not working, then you need to look at it and say, okay, there's a few things that we need to tweak. Maybe it could be your lifestyle, your environment. It could be the diet. You just need to change your macros a little bit. And you're probably doing too much training in the gym. You're probably not sleeping very, very well. But like I always say to people, like, listen, no matter how bad it is, we're never going to be adding carbohydrates back into the diet because you don't need it.
Absolutely. I mean, it is all those things. You're absolutely right. People overtrain, undertrain, overeat, undereat. You know, people don't believe it, but sometimes undereating can be problematic and make your body.
I see that
hold
quite
on
a
to
bit.
things.
Is people don't realize the nutrients they need, and undereating is a big one. When you're filling up with stuff that brings nothing to the table, that's going to be a huge factor for sure.
Yes.
Yep. When would it be fair enough to say, like, with all these people that are eating this way, or they decide they want to bring back carbohydrates or whatever, like, I kind of go back to the thoughts of what would we have done without all this stuff? Like, what would we have done without, like, even before the agrarian revolution, your body would have been surviving to the best of its ability with the food that was supplied by Mother Earth. And none of these things would be a factor. None of them. Maybe some berries and some fruit in season, or if you're in the areas. But that's where I have a tough time with this, like, trying to, like, from the foundations to the modern day meal times, how much we're supposed to eat. And then when something, you know, because I've been a carnivore now for almost 5 years. I know Mark's pretty close. Peter's, you know, you just mentioned 3. But is that possible, that we're getting back to being just truly human, and, you know, messing with something from modern man to make us more optimal human doesn't make sense to me. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. It's not natural. I mean, this is why we look at different formulations for insulin that you get from the pharmaceutical companies. They're not very natural. They some of them are really rapid acting, because we're not designed to have huge spikes of carbohydrate. I mean, it's that simple. And that's why we get the terrible crashes, the sugar crashes and the highs, because it's all inappropriate and the pancreas can't keep up, because we're doing something that the pancreas is not designed to do, which is, you know, mitigate incoming 400 grams of carbohydrates. It's all well and good if you're doing 4 hours of surfing, but if you're sedentary, the last thing you want to be doing is spiking your blood sugar. I will have to say, I have a 7 o'clock appointment, actually.
No worries.
I wasn't expecting it to go on this long, actually. So I do apologize.
No worries. We'd love to. We want to respect your time for sure. Thank you for doing this. We were looking at the chats, and we maybe love to have you back on, because there's a couple questions that we'd like to get to.
I can do that. Yeah.
But guys, Stephen, thank you so much for being here and explaining quite a few things. You've opened up my eyes to a few of the whys. You know, like, a lot of people, you know, they're focusing on the how, but they, you know, it's really tough to figure out the whys, and appreciate everything that you said today. And hopefully the people in the chats and the people that are listening are taking in the wisdom.
Yeah, and I think I didn't look at the comments, by the way. Jonathan's in the room, and excellent. High triglycerides, more mobilization and potential utilization. It's an artifact, useless metric. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing, the trafficking of fats. When you're fat adapted, you will see that more. But yeah, so hi, Jonathan. Yes.
Well, yes, we'd love to have you back on, and maybe get into some audience or chat questions and concerns. I mean, we could talk for hours. Thank you
just
so
book me, and I'm quite happy to come back on. It's been a pleasure. Really nice to meet you.
For all the people that are, you know, on the Meat of the Matter side, Stephen, where can people find you? How do they get a hold of you and follow you?
My YouTube is YouTube at Coach Stephen, or you can put Stephen Thomas Bachelor of Science Runners. My Substack is ukcarnivore.substack.com, I think. They're the best two places. My website is ukcarnivore.com, and myself and Richard Smith do host a school community, Low Carb School, which is SKOOL. If you look it up, I can put links in the email.
For sure, that would be great. Any last final words there, guys?
No, it's been a pleasure, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on.
That's all right. I'll see you soon then.
All
You
right,
will
guys.
speak very soon.
I'll
Thanks very
definitely come
much.
back on. Yeah, okay.
Thanks for being here. And we're live every Sunday, guys. Come on and see us at the Meat of the Matter, please. And we will take care. Have a great day and happy eating.
Yep. Bye bye.